and whatever I see is smiling at me. Love is who I am. So hello there everyone, and welcome to this video today with me here in the beautiful Alps, where I really wish to address the topic of energy overstimulation. I'm sorry, I'm laughing. I get a bit tongue-tied today. It's really intense energies that this equinox has brought us all, and I wish to address the deeper meaning of the integration process of this refinement. So as you know, since today, on 22nd of March, Mercury goes retrograde, and the first thing I wish to share about this is that, you know, there's always such confusion in the New Age and spiritual or love and light communities about this, and people are always saying, oh, Mercury retrograde, not again, oh, you know. And I really wish to share firstly my own experience with this, because for me, Mercury retrograde is always a huge blessing, a gift, and in a way it's an integration period where I get to finish things that previously I couldn't, or they were somehow on hold. And I even have Mercury retrograde in my natal chart. And as a Virgo, you know, I'm strongly affected, but always in a good way. And I've learned this through observing my own cycles, my own astrology, and how I flow through life, through the integration principle of my own life experience. So for me, it's always a beautiful time. And planetary retrogrades, as I always tell you, are all about not just reflection. You know, people say reflect, rethink, revisit things, but it's also about the deeper integration period where we are offered a chance of refinement towards something maybe mentally we were gathering a lot, and this happens through the energy stimulation that we're going through, all of us, as we're increasingly receiving, you know, frequencies of the light and new codes, you know, new guidance, initiations. But during these phases, it's very good for us. We kind of bring them more into form, into action, and it's going to be in Aries, which is all about action. So in my retrospective here today, in my humble opinion, when we work with those aspects, we're moving beyond these false beliefs, which are very outdated. For me, they're very, I don't know who made them up, that this is supposed to be a period of pause and halt and not doing things. For me, it's always a very active period, but in a way of finishing things and putting those dots on the I, you know, and cherries on top, a lot of that. So this is the first thing I wish to address today. But why is it so important specifically now is because it follows exactly through the equinox period, which was an immense gateway. I felt such fatigue, drained, tiredness in my body for 3 days now. And although this energy kept on coming, a lot of us, because we have our work and we have people to assist, whatever we do, you know, in our lives, we tend to get busy. And this is something I want to talk about today. When is it really work? When is it a distraction? When something serves us or not? Because I want to talk about the integration principle. Recently I had this beautiful session, and a beautiful channeled spirit guidance came through about the non-alignment of the magnetic and electric forces, and I'm going to talk about this today as well. So how can we integrate that to be balanced, you know, in our embodiment? So I have some notes here again, although it's very hard for me to see today because the sun is coming straight into my face and in my phone, so it's kind of getting reflected. But I want to talk about these messages first that kept on coming lately about creating a sacred space, the importance of sacred space and seclusion. Creating, you know, seclusion is not the same as isolation. It's just like your sacred spot to which you can always return to, revitalize and replenish, to be with the energy. Because what tends to happen is when these gateways occur, right, when these potent energies come, everyone wants to discuss it. There's so much information online. Everyone is talking about basically everything nowadays. And instead of just being with the energies, everyone's hyper and buzzing. And, you know, and this hyper energy tends to keep us in this electric state. Without the application of magnetic nature within our bodies, we tend to get, it's like overridden by the energy. So it's like the wave washes over you instead of surfing through the wave, you know, like surfers know how to do so beautifully. So these messages are about taking that retreat, time for solace, to just be with the energy and feel. Because when I'm tired, if I just constantly do something and I'm hyper, you know, it just continues. But when I take maybe just a few minutes to lie down in bed, what I will feel during that wave of fatigue is immense circling around in my pelvic area, immense pulsation, and I'll just be with the energy for a while, the wave moves. And this is what I want to address today. So we've also had a very long winter here, but it's not just here in our Alps. You know, first you think you live here all the time, well, is this the only place that's happening? And then you see other people talking about snow being in all parts of Europe, and I think in Northern America, maybe even some other parts. But this long winter also can be very draining for the body. Snow just fell off the roof up there. Sorry, guys. It can be as well draining in a way, because what we do, those of us especially who connect very much with the nature elements, with the elementals that also have their cycles. As you know, nature moves through her cycles. When we're in nature, and as you know, I'm very hyper, but when it's proper weather and it can be outdoors most of the time, that's what I do. Sorry. So what happens is, when winter is as long as it was this year, the body is not in that state where they can also revitalize through the elements. I mean, we can work with elements energetically, but our physical component has to be appreciated as well. So physically, I've been shown it was kind of draining for a lot of us during this period, because we were so much in this winter mode that the body kind of usually has its cycles, and because the cycle was a bit longer than we're usually used to, the bodies haven't regenerated through the elements. And that's why life force cultivation stimulation that I always talk about, which is the most important part of spiritual integration work, is now so more important as well, because we couldn't recharge so much with nature, through nature. So through nature, prana and the elementals, because when nature is in full bloom, when you can feel that blossoming, you know, when I'm very hyper, I can do lots of work, but I'm mostly outside, so I don't get tired as much as, you know, in the winter, I can't do as much. It's different. So watch out for that, to constantly connect to the elements, because when we're, like I said, physically not in that alignment, then we need to energetically stimulate that through our bodies as well. So calling and creating this fortress of light through the elemental structure. Now I want to talk about the energy overstimulation. I've talked about before about the energetic bombardment. It's almost like an overload. Each time, you know, you play a video on YouTube, then YouTube will say, well, this is what we also recommend to you, this and this and that. And if people kind of get too obsessed about that information, and you know, nowadays so many people like to wait or talk about what others would like to address. They're waiting for what others have to share. They're always looking into what others will say or what they have to share. Some kind of like, even if we don't admit it, you know, we kind of like, let's hope this person will give us a bit more information about here and there. When it happens naturally in an organic flow, when something just finds you randomly or pops up, it's more coming from your inward guidance than thinking what all you need to see in order to be up to date. Because nowadays, no one can be up to date with everything that's happening. It's impossible. And it's draining, and it's taking us away from where we should be in our bodies, and it's depleting our life force. So the energetic overstimulation is so intense, and I feel this Mercury retrograde in Aries is about that prioritization sorry, really to prioritize where our life force should be. I always talk about this highest potential when you're drawn towards. So what have I written here? It's important to know what really serves us, not just what informs us, but does it serve us? Does the content, information, does it serve you? You know, because otherwise it overwhelms us, and it can create a lot of disproportion of the energy through our bodies. So all the information that's there, it's about more feeling into the energy than just being up to date with everything. And now with these smartphones and technology, it's getting crazier and crazier, you know, by the minute. So let us be with the energy. You know, if you feel you have so much work to do, whatever, you know, understand and acknowledge we're in this retrograde for a reason, because if we can live like that all the time already, then the planetary celestial bodies, you know, the light they receive from the higher celestial proportion in cosmic dances, they're kind of serving us in that way to integrate more of that organic way of living and being. I also want to talk about the other form of overstimulation, which is not just, you know, we're being bombarded energetically and then informationally on all levels, right? Energy-wise, mentally, emotionally, all this stimulation. So there's another aspect through which can be we can be sucked into or pulled into, which is called the mass entertainment industry. You know, the Pleiadians, through Barbara Marciniak, they always say now half of the population, more than half of the population, is just being entertained at this time, which is hilarious. And look at the nature of how the words entertainment and entrainment, which you know what it means, you fall into the spell of something, you become entrained with that, how they sound similar, and there is an energetic link there that we need to consider. So our body language will talk to us when we are with the energies. When we're not, it's almost like we can hear ourselves eventually, and you can be informed on all degrees and up to date, but are you really listening? Are you listening to your own calling, your own guidance, your own wisdom? Because people who do, they're always receiving their own attunements. So it's not as important whether you're always up to date, because you're going to be inwardly up to date. So recently, again, I watched a live, I didn't watch it online, too bad, but Patricia Corey had another beautiful video that was in alignment with what I'm sharing today, and it was about the importance of pain and how pain is being synthesized, used in a way that we are constantly anesthetizing ourselves. That's what I wanted to say. So this was about pain being as a messenger. I'm going to share the link down below with you so you can take a look into that video, because they're shared on YouTube as well. I've talked about this before, pain as a gateway, and how when we are fear of pain takes us even further away from our bodies, and how our body has certain energetic channels. And she talked about how we're programmed, we're encoded in our DNA to also have pain points, because that's how we learn, and we learn to feel through our bodies and know when something is not good for us and when something needs repair, just, you know, or maintenance in a way, just like the car does, right? When something's wrong, you fix the engine, and, you know, so on and so forth. So that was a beautiful example. And we can't hear ourselves, we anesthetize, then we can't really know what's the core, what we need to align with more. And the thing is, with the intensified energy on the planet, as you know, it will just keep on going. It increases those pain points. So these points, if we study them, but not just, you know, reading about it through certain, I don't know, principles, you know, of the meridians and how they correspond to certain pain points and what you can do to remedy, but more about how is this, you know, the cosmology of the body, how is this related to the whole picture? Because this intense energy, you know, that brings things up, it always serves as the gateway, and that's why the pain also is related with that gateway. It can be a gateway of illumination as well, when we know how to move through that. So when we're tired, there's a message in that. Why are we tired? You know, and this is what I'm going to talk about today, why these things are happening when these specifically more intensified energy emanations start to rise up, but not just we perceive them coming as above to below, but also when they start to rise in our earthly embodiments to our bodies. And for those of us who are in a way embodied teachers of embodiment, we can bring those messages through in that way. So anytime through this gateway the energy starts to rise, we have to, and we will be called to do life force mastery work, because I see people who are not going to do that. They will get more and more tired, more drained, and eventually people will just seek more information, what is this about, or waiting for something to happen or to have that final release to be released. It doesn't happen. I've talked to you before. This is the year of the feminine principle. This is the breaking point where you either start doing the body work or you become numbed with everything that's here to overstimulate, overwhelm, and it can just create more and more confusion. So instead of confusion, let's choose life force infusion, yeah? So one example would be intense sleep deprivation or even sleep distorted patterns. A lot of people around the world are experiencing this now, and including myself sometimes. You know, you're so tired, but you are wired still, and you don't want to go to bed because your spirit is secure in that elevated state. So how can you manage that electric and magnetic nature to be in unison? And that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Just wait for the pinnacle. One example I've noticed recently is that when the energies are intense, and this is usually during the full moons, sometimes new moons as well, but usually full moons. And I've noticed it now on the Equinox as well. Here in the village, dogs start to bark like crazy at night. and you can just feel it. They're like pounding, like, oh, it's like, what's happening? And you can know, because the animals are connected with the energy. They just feel it, and they respond you know, the way they do. And because people like to suppress, you know, animals are very natural. They're just gonna express. So they do their thing. And animals sometimes will, what people report, act strangely, but it's not strange. It's just feeling or charging the energy through and expressing it in their own way. So now I want to talk about this thing. Yes, the balance of the so-called feminine and masculine forces of creation, the electricity and magnetism. So I'm going to be doing that more intensely in my upcoming Cosmic Union course, but just for the record, I want to give you a short visual of what this is truly about. So as you know, when the increased energy starts to come, and we all have the central column, as you know, in our body, which when these points of our physicalness and then the incoming light interconnect, we call these energy vortices our chakric system. And what happens is, during those increased states, the electricity level, which is that we would call that, well, the masculine, you know, that pure force, just like emanating, it starts to be increased. And during that activation we had in that session, I clearly saw through spirit that when this electricity starts to flow through the main channel, through the main column, and if the magnetic nature, which is spiraling in nature, right, it's the wave and the spiral, if it doesn't somehow align with the activity of the light, we all talk about now, everyone talks about the increased activities of the light, yes, but what about the increased activities of the embodiment? It has to interlock, because when the overriding wave will somehow not align with the spiraling magnetic nature that we've created somehow in our bodies and that we're holding rooted in our bodies, it will sort of, it won't be able to interconnect. So it will create a lot of dispersed energy. We will have energy leakages, what we call energy drainage. Wow, ice is really falling down there, cracking open. And sometimes the energy will be unevenly distributed through the body, through the channels of the body, and that sometimes will cause the, you know, the tiredness, fatigue, or sleep deprivation. We'll feel hyper instead of, you know, hyper is not the only state. It has to be balanced with the magnetic nature, because with just this increased electricity, you know, I'm always hyper, but then I need to also cultivate the magnetic nature so that my body is able to receive more, because if the body is not able to, in reciprocity, receive that electricity, it won't be good. You know, so people talk a lot about this Kundalini activation rising up. Well, if it's not, you know, in equal proportion or distribution with the channeled Ascension process and moving into the body and the spiraling nature of the magnetic essence, then it's not going to be creating that interlock. Because just recently I read about this post about the sun, you know, when the star creates, when it burns helium, you know, creates this fusion process, and why the star is always able to maintain itself, because there is an equal proportion to what it radiates and then what it, you know, it's like, again, electricity and magnetism, and what it kind of draws into for that sustenance, so that the gravitational pull is in equal proportion. I'm not a scientist, but in essence, when I read that, I really had that visual of something similar, that what Spirit showed me during that activation is that there always, for that optimum cultivation, there needs to be this proportion, and I call this the sacred divine union, which is the ultimate sacred alchemy, and we can create that in our bodies as cosmic humans. So more about this and higher understanding and how we can do that will be in my Cosmic Union and Physical Ascension course, which is coming up. I'm really working on the last details of what needs to be in the course. But I want to now mention this because I read in Barbara Hand Clow's books about the frequency teachers, which come at certain periods in time. And I had goosebumps, and I really align with that, because I always, when I watched other people teach, I didn't feel like I belonged to that same stream of what they have to share. Somehow it felt different, that what has to come next. And when I read that, I really was like, oh yes, that's it. So the frequency teachers, who are we? We are beings who can teach people how to actually work with this, with the basic energy or alchemical system, in order for this sacred union, divine union to occur in our bodies, because it's direct understanding of how frequency works and how it operates through cosmic principles, or I call them principles of creation. And this embracing of the feminine principle is so important now because of that, and because it was so suppressed for so long, because everyone talked about, you know, this only the light and the source, and so much of this understanding how we can connect with what I call this womb of creation, and how to anchor it in our bodies, and how to really be the perfect match to the source and creation as one. Yes, it's important now to bring that understanding back, and this is what I'm devoted to in my life's work. And all that orientation only towards the upper part, it somehow has been distorted in many teachings as well. So what actually increases the magnetism in our bodies? Many things. As you know, even when you're just here sitting on the sun, you're receiving this electricity. So one of the things that's really good and helpful is to just, when you sit or meditate or just receive, is just imagine that light, that essence of that electric nature being automatically received through magnetic nature. You can perceive that as you know, unwinding spirals that move and travel around your body, and how you're receiving those waves within the spiral. Also cosmic dance, of course, because there's lots of circular movements. I have a whole course called the Cosmic Dance for the Galactic Human. Recently, someone who did the course said to me as feedback, a beautiful lady said, all I want to do is dance now. And I love that. That's what you should be doing. Also Tibetan exercises, you know, especially the spinning part. When you're spinning, you're actually interlocking with the energy. What's up with the eyes? I don't know if you can hear it, just eyes cracking there. Yeah, Tibetan exercises. There's just a few main ones you can do daily or whenever it feels good for you. Lots of breathing exercises, but in a very grounded way, not just stimulating it upwards, downwards. Again, I have a whole huge extensive course called Tantrika Life Force Mastery, which is the essence of all our work here through the feminine principle that takes place through our bodies and becoming these illumined beings in the physical. What else? Basically that's the majority of the thing. That's why I keep hearing dance, 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 because when we increase this spin, you know, in a vibratory pattern of the spiral, then these cosmic waves will not have such an impact. So when this disproportion happens, we will feel dizziness even sometimes, or some people even faint, because there's a disproportion to how this can be received. When there's this interlocking created, and we constantly have to cultivate that, because the frequency is rising, so the magnetic nature of our body has to expand in that way. Yeah, so Life Force Mastery, Cosmic Dance, this all really serves us right. I would advise all of you to create the most sacred space at this time that you can, to just be with the energies, because whenever a gateway like this happens, you know, everyone wants to share their materials and writings and articles, you know, all of us. And sometimes I feel this pressure because everyone perceives it to come at that time, but sometimes all we can do is just be with the energy, and we can't do everything at once. So listen to yourself wisely, especially if you're a healer, teacher, you know, what is it called, a midwife of some sorts to these energies, that you will also cultivate that for yourself. Because even just overstimulation through all the connections we have with people, we have to start asking ourselves the same questions. You know, is it just informing us, or does this communication stream, does it serve me? Does it serve us? Does it serve the whole? Because a lot of the communications we have is based on dependency on another, and just having someone all the time in your life, or always communicating. For me, you know, I love to communicate with beautiful people, but recently I've noticed that one-on-one communication is getting more and more difficult for me because of all that I do, and it's too intense. And I can just have very few people that I can do that with, even that not on a daily basis. But that's why I've created these communities. Like, I have a beautiful Instagram community with people who are just amazing, you know, and it's a lot more playful and organic, and I just love that space. I love to share on Instagram and with all of you who are there supporting. So recently, as you know, I will share more about that in my April update. But I've made some changes, and I no longer do the Facebook work because it's all doubled information anyway. It's just a bunch of copying and pasting that is really not of the highest essence. So come to the Instagram community if you want. You can find me there. All the links are always shared down below or in my information box on YouTube. That's more important now, you know, to be in that group space. Because sometimes one-on-one takes a lot of time, and I do that very intensely and channeled kind of way via my sessions. I've helped a lot of people during the course of many years, and it's just been an amazing journey for me as well, as I discover new gifts through which I can serve. So recently I had a comment on Instagram from this beautiful being, and she wrote to me, you know what, you always do so much. She said, take care after you as well. She said, we're always shifting, you know, we're always kind of like taking shifts. One's doing the work, then there's someone else. No one is doing it alone, and we have to always remind ourselves of that we do our part the best as we can. There's always someone taking shifts, you know, even like one goes to sleep, they wake up, someone else, somewhere else on the planet. So it's a beautiful process. And I really desire for everyone to start just feeling more. And that's why the messages have been all about the essence, feeling, cultivating. So if you haven't taken these courses yet and you're still a beginner, they're very practical for all levels. And I'll talk to you again very soon. We're going to do more through the topic I'm preparing next week. And lots of love, beautiful energies to integrate. Bye-bye. So my sweet beloved, something else came up as I was contemplating on this subject of informational and energetic stimulation. So as you know, there is a lot of calling for our attention to get us where we're not supposed to be. So as wary as the energetic stimulation that is natural is in a way good for us, so that we integrate these energies. The informational, same kind of stream, but not the same, you know. Sometimes even not just overstimulation, but even provocation can be or can have manipulated agendas and influences behind that as well. So yesterday I was talking to a companion, and we've shared or touched base upon, you know, how our views on YouTube are being in a way sometimes infiltrated. I said, you know, I watch a video just to see what people are talking about, to inform myself, to see where the majority of people sometimes is at, what they're watching, what they're saying, just to be, you know, covered in that area. And then all of a sudden my whole YouTube recommendation list is full of those videos and full of recommendations. And although I do not watch those, and I only watch, and even that I filtrate the content on my own channel, which is kept at minimum, because as you know, I focus on my direct spirit guidance and content that I'm here to share in my own mission. But there's something very interesting that we've discussed, because I've mentioned that I've somehow seen in a thumbnail picture on YouTube, there was a person who was lying down and they recorded a session, hypnotic regression. And I didn't watch the video, but I've seen this, and we've shared this with this being as a conversation exchange, because I said this is very beautiful once we do that in a private space. You know, it's like a sacred space. And again, the importance of sacred space cannot be stressed enough in what we're doing now, because a lot of the information is feeding into the, as you know, the overseeing system that, you know, is basically coming from the system we call the matrix, or, you know, the false grid or the control grid. So I want to share this beautiful response as feedback, because a lot of the things we're watching and we're saying yes to when we're watching to them, we're not saying no, basically holds things, you know, that then people pick up and think that's just the new normal. And most of the times, a lot of that needs to be filtrated to discernment. So the correspondence coming through was, the person said, I agree about these regressions in a private sacred space, but I also think there are the ones who want us to believe that doing something like this is the new normal, so that we all go and, you know, do something similar, that it will benefit them because it's all information to them and they like to have as much possible. So the more equals, it's easily to manipulate. And as you know, sometimes humans are like sheep. They are following each other. So if one will do it, the rest will come along. It's a strategy and a part of the bigger plan. So As you know, a lot of times these things are very hidden, and if we don't connect to the essence level, we won't know what it is about. And then we talked about the privacy of our YouTube and the information we subscribe to, and then the information that the artificial intelligence filters provide for us. And the companion said it does that on my phone too, and sometimes it can be annoying, but we have to change the parameters, and sometimes I watch something totally different or click something for a minute, so that it then leads to all videos being about that. Or we can also delete our history, and then for a while the system will not know what to feed us and get all kind of nonsense to us. There is another great example of how they know everything about what we are doing. So they use basically all kinds of tricks to feed us information. And so the important thing here is to keep on thinking for ourselves, not to get tricked into their stuff. So as you know, also a lot of weird behavior isn't always done by humans. As you probably know, a lot of it is orchestrated and it's intentionally propagated through the media. And we have to think about that, because it is sometimes only what they want us to believe, like another toy of mind control. Everything is now these days monitored, and we have to be aware of that. So that is a beautiful sharing. I had to share this with all of you, because energy stimulation, overstimulation is one thing. The other is informational infusion nowadays, that a lot of it is being purposely infiltrated through our systems. As you know, a lot of my videos of the late have been about this topic. It's been increasing in intensity, and I wish for you to contemplate just on what truly serves you, because when it does, it also serves the light of unity consciousness. And I greet you in that sacred space of love, discernment, and of course the unity of all life in creation, as in all life loved through the main core of who we truly are. And so it is.